Grief isn't tied to death. Sometimes it's tied to change, especially the kind we didn't ask for. When you're diagnosed with a chronic illness, it's not just your body that changes. It's your routine, your independence, your career dreams, your relationships, your sense of who you are. In this episode of Empowerment and Illness, we're diving deep into what it means to grieve while still living. This kind of grief is quiet, often invisible, and very real. And today, we're going to sit with it together. I'm Gwen, your host, and your companion in this space. I want you to feel like we're just having a heartfelt conversation. Maybe you're listening in bed because it's a low energy day. Or maybe you're out for a slow walk needing comfort. Wherever you are, this episode is for those of us trying to hold it all together while pieces of our identity feel like they're falling away. We'll talk about the types of grief people rarely talk about, how it shows up, and ways we can start to honor the loss without losing ourselves in it. This won't be a rushed episode. We're going to move intentionally through each segment. There would be time to pause, breathe, maybe even cry. I'll also share personal reflections and prompts for you to journal or just reflect on later. So let's begin, not by trying to fix grief, but by simply acknowledging it. When we imagine our lives, there's a path we think we're going to walk. Maybe it involves a certain job, family structure, or just the ability to wake up and feel okay. Chronic illness can rip that vision away in an instant or slowly erode it over time. And there's grief in that. Not because we're weak or pessimistic, but because it's human to mourn what we were excited for. When your future shifts without your permission, you need space to say, "This hurts." What makes this type of grief so hard is that it can be ongoing. It's not a one-time moment. It's a series of realizations. I can't do that anymore. That opportunity no longer is possible. I've changed, and not everyone understands. And because many of us try to be brave or have been told to stay positive, we often swallow that grief. We push through. We don't always realize we're grieving until the sadness creeps in like fog we can't explain. Today, I want you to know it's okay to be sad about the life you didn't get to live. That doesn't mean you're giving up. It means you're human. You can still build a beautiful life while honoring the one you imagine. Let grief speak, but don't let it define you. Marinate on that for a second. When I was diagnosed with lupus, I didn't just lose my health. I lost almost everything I had built. My independence vanished first. I could no longer rely on my body to get me through the day like I used to. Then came the quiet unraveling of everything else. My creativity faded in exhaustion. My boyfriend walked away when he couldn't understand what I was going through. My circle of friends grew smaller until it was almost gone. I lost my job, and eventually I lost my home. One by one, the pieces of my identity were stripped away. I became financially broken. The bills piled up and the debt grew, and I had no energy to fight back. I was mentally and emotionally overwhelmed, caught in a storm I didn't see coming. And physically, my body was unfamiliar. It did things I didn't understand. I would wake up not knowing what kind of day it would be, if I could walk, think clearly, or even feed myself. I didn't know what to do with this condition. I didn't know where it came from or why I had it. There were no clear answers, just this overwhelming sense of loss and confusion. Lupus changed my life in a way I didn't choose and couldn't undo. It took me to a dark, uncertain place, And for a long time, I didn't think I'd make it out. But over time, through community, through moments like this where we're talking openly, where we stop hiding the truth of what this experience is, I found something powerful. Connection. I found my voice. And that's why I show up here on this podcast with you. Because if you're in that dark place too, I want you to know that you're not alone and you are not without hope. One of the most painful parts of chronic illness is how isolating it can be, especially when the loss isn't visible. Friends might not understand why you had to cancel plans again. Family might say, but you don't look sick. And coworkers may interpret your accommodations as laziness. When no one sees what you've lost, it can feel like you're carrying a secret sorrow that no one respects or validates. This invisible grief is compounded when people stop showing up. It's heartbreaking to watch your social circle shrink, not because you've changed emotionally, but because your energy and capacity have. You're not being flaky. You're navigating a body that surprises you. And that emotional labor, it adds to the grief. It's grief for relationships that couldn't adjust, for people who didn't stay, for the parts of you that were so tightly tied to those connections. So what do you do with that? We grieve. We give ourselves permission to miss the people, the routines, the casual joy of being spontaneous. And we slowly, gently, create new support systems. Ones that understand our boundaries and still want us in their lives. That's the beginning of healing, even if the ache remains. Society loves a comeback story. We are constantly fed this narrative. Fall down, rise back up stronger, be better than ever. But what happens when chronic illness means you can't go back to who you were? And you won't. The pressure to bounce back can turn into self-blame. You may think, why can't I recover like they did? Or, what's wrong with me? This is where grief hides in plain sight, behind shame and comparison. We often grieve not what we've lost, but the version of ourselves we thought we had to be. Maybe you were known for your energy, or your reliability, or your ambition. When those things shift, it can feel like you're disappointing others, even yourself. But here's the truth. Who you are now isn't a lesser version of who you were. It's just different. That version of you deserves the same respect, the same compassion, and maybe even more patience. So instead of bouncing back, let's talk about growing forward. That's not a slogan. It's an invitation. Growing forward means recognizing where you are, accepting your new limits, and building a life from that place. It might look different, but it can still be meaningful, rich, and true. Grief doesn't follow a neat 5-step process. It doesn't arrive with a calendar and say, okay, we'll be done in 6 weeks. When you're living with a chronic illness, grief is like a wave that rolls in and out. You may feel okay one day and broken the next. And that's not regression. It's just life. Healing isn't linear, and neither is grief. A lot of us judge ourselves for still grieving after all this time. We think we should be over it, especially when others stop asking how you're doing. But I want you to hear this. The only person who gets to decide your grief timeline is you. You don't have to justify it. You don't need to rush it. The loss is ongoing, so the processing will be too. One practice I've found helpful is checking in with my grief like it's an old friend. Hey, I see you're here today. What are you trying to tell me? This makes space for the emotion without letting it take over. It reminds you that grief is not your enemy. It's your companion in healing. Now marinate on that too. This might surprise you, but grief doesn't cancel out joy, and joy doesn't cancel out grief. You can feel both, sometimes on the same day. Even in the same moment. You might be laughing with friends and suddenly feel the sting of what you've lost. Or you might be crying over a memory, then find comfort in a favorite song or smell. That duality is real, and it's allowed. Living with chronic illness teaches you how to hold emotional contradictions. It sharpens your ability to feel deeply. And when you allow space for both grief and joy, something powerful happens. You stop waiting for normal to come back, and you start living in the present. You find gratitude not in spite of the pain, but alongside it. This isn't toxic positivity. I'm not saying to look on the bright side or pretend everything's fine. I'm saying when joy visits you, even for a moment, let it in. Let it remind you that you're still here, that your life still has beauty, that you're not just surviving, you're still capable of experience and light. One of the hardest part of grief is that it shakes the foundation of your identity. When you can no longer do what you used to, who are you? It's a terrifying question. Chronic illness can strip away roles, worker, athlete, caregiver, planner, and leave you feeling like a blank slate. But here's the opportunity in that. You get to rebuild. Rebuilding identity doesn't mean erasing your past self. It means integrating who you were with who you are now. You might find strength in unexpected places, like being a fierce advocate for others, or being more empathetic, or finding joy in simplicity. You may take on new titles, new passions, new forms of expression. This is your chance to write a new story, even if the old one ended without your consent. It takes time, it takes tears, but identity after loss is possible. And when you meet yourself in this new space, with compassion instead of comparison, you begin to realize that grief isn't the end of your story. It's the middle. And from here, you still get to choose where you go next. Before we leave, I would like to close with a special portion of the show I call Healing Heartbeats. This is where we allow ourselves to wallow in sorrow. Give yourself 3 minutes to laugh, cry, scream, cuss, or just sit in silence. Whatever you need to do to feel it, do it. Let the depression in for only 3 minutes. Once you've reached 3 minutes, compartmentalize it and get back to living. This is a rinse and repeat behavior. You cannot let depression take over, because when it does, it will not let go. When we hear about the passing of someone, they have the day they were born and the day they pass away. There is a dash in the middle. It's not a long line, but a short dash. That dash represents your life. Go live in spite of having a chronic illness. Don't let your condition stop you. Before we close, I want you to know that if you've cried during this episode or felt seen or even numb, that's okay. Every reaction is valid. Grief is messy. It's not something to fix. It's something to hold gently. You don't have to have all the answers right now. Just keep showing up for yourself in small ways. That is enough. Take a breath. Let yourself be proud of making it through this episode, because showing up for grief is an act of courage. You didn't avoid it. You faced it. That's powerful, and it means healing is happening, even if you can't always feel it. To our listeners, Thank you for being here as we explore the deeply emotional side of living with chronic illness and autoimmune diseases. This episode on grief and loss wasn't easy, but it was necessary. Each of us carry our own unique journey, and by creating space to talk about the invisible weight of loss, we begin to heal. Whether you're newly diagnosed or have been walking this road for years, you are not alone in your grief, your questions, or your quiet strength. This is the third episode of our series, Mental Health and Emotional Wellness. As this series continues, we'll keep addressing the real-life challenges that often go unspoken. We're grateful to have you as a part of the empowerment and illness community. Together, we're breaking silence, building support, and making sure no one has to navigate this alone. Strength grows where support thrives. Remember, you have the strength, the heart, and the support to continue your journey. Be safe.